A full-blown global energy crisis is on, with fuel and electricity bills mounting for regular folks like you and me. That could further lead to inflation, pushing families into poverty, and even slowing down economic growth. Countries around the world are keen to march further down the path of alternative energy sources. Meanwhile, climate policies do even more to promote sustainability. What are some options? Wind, hydro, nuclear, solar. With years of development, however, these new energy sources still face many challenges. How can we reduce storage and distribution costs from these new energy sources? How does construction technology and engineering further boost the transition to green energy? In this episode of Mega Reality, we are speaking with engineers around the world to find out. Hello people, Gerald here. We're back with another episode of Mega Reality live from the capital, Chinese capital of Beijing. Today we're going to talk in depth about green energy, green drive in the world. I have a really great bunch of gentlemen here with us. We have Mr. Yang Yan, the Vice President of Operations for CTG Brazil, a subsidiary of China Three Gorges Corporation. China Three Gorges is the world's largest hydropower company. And we also have Dr. Muaz Awan, a hydropower engineer. And we have another special guest, very experienced energy executive, Mr. Ignacio Herrero. Welcome, gentlemen. So first, let's go to Pakistan. We're going to look closely at a gigantic hydro dam, the Karod Hydro Dam, which just inaugurated in 2022. And now let's take a look.
Welcome to the Karod Hydropower Project, the first large-scale hydropower project of the Belt and Road Initiative and one of the largest renewable energy projects of Pakistan. Today, we'll be taking you on a tour of this incredible facility. Behind me is the Karod Dam. It is an asphalt core rock-filled dam with a height of 95.5 meters and a width of 460 meters. The reservoir stretches 27 kilometers upstream and has a total capacity of 189 million cubic meters. This dam has become a new lifeline for the flora and fauna of the region. Right now, we're standing inside the powerhouse. The Karod Hydropower Project generates electricity through its 4 Francis-type turbines, each producing 180 megawatts, and combined producing 720 megawatts. Using the latest turbine technology, these mighty turbines convert the river flow of the Jhelum River into clean and sustainable energy. The project generates 3.2 billion kilowatt hours of clean electricity per year, which is enough to power approximately 5 billion people. Living at the banks of the Yangtze River and now the Jhelum River, infrastructure has shaped my life. So that's a brief outlook of the Karod Hydropower Project, which is a shining example of the Belt and Road Initiative and how green energy can transform a region.
So, we are very glad to have Dr. Muaz Awan with us today online, the engineer who just showed us how the Karod Hydro Dam looks. So, Dr. Awan, for developing countries like Pakistan, how important is it to seek a green path, find reliable new energy alternatives, including work with other countries such as China? Dr. Awan.
So, Gerald, thanks for having me on your show. Gerald, in today's global landscape, it is crucial for developing countries to prioritize seeking a green path and exploring reliable new energy alternatives. The importance of this transition cannot be overstated, as it directly impacts the long-term sustainability and well-being of these nations. Consider Pakistan as an example, where the power sector was severely affected by the restrictions imposed during the COVID era, followed by the Ukraine crisis, which we all know, which has led to exponential increases in the energy prices for coal, oil, and gas. Consequently, power tariffs rose, leading to weakened exports and a vulnerable economy. So, in light of these circumstances, countries like Pakistan, I think, must reconsider their energy priorities and swiftly embrace renewable energy sources. Fortunately, the Pakistani government has recognized the problem and initiated various energy policies. For instance, the Solarization of Pakistan program, which aims to install around 10,000 megawatts of solar energy as a substitution to fuel-based thermal plants. And then there is definitely the environmental factor, where, as you know, Pakistan is one of the most environmentally vulnerable countries where climate change is causing droughts and at times abnormal rainfalls, resulting in massive amounts of flooding. Just in 2022, as you know, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres put it, the monsoon was on steroids. So that is the level of impact. The floods submerged one-third of the country. 15,000 people were dead or injured. 8 million were displaced, and the country suffered economic damages of around 30 billion US dollars. By the way, Gerald, just giving you some latest updates from the super cyclone Biparjoy, which you might have heard, which is expected to hit the coastal areas of both Pakistan and India anytime right now, as of we're speaking. So when we talk about climate change, we're all in this together. Gerald, given these circumstances, there are compelling reasons for Pakistan and other developing countries to swiftly transition to renewable energy sources. However, Gerald,
yeah, absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So, however, while renewable and green energy are all very admirable concepts, securing the necessary finances for implementing these projects is extremely challenging for a developing country like Pakistan. And this is where major countries like China play, a crucial role. And Pakistan sees a significant opportunity in aligning with China's Belt and Road Initiative and its, broader efforts to improve the environment and reduce emissions.
Absolutely. As you have mentioned, climate change definitely put human beings at a position that we need to rethink how that we live with the society. And again, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the show, the energy crisis, the fuel prices are rising, and alternative energy sources somewhat bring a solution to human beings today. But again, Dr. Awan, Corrode is built and engineered with Chinese technologies. How does it feel like to work at Corrode? Any proud moments?
Okay, so just to give you a brief, outlook of the Corrode hydropower project, which falls under the Belt and Road Initiative, is not merely a collaboration between two countries. The project also involves the World Bank's International Finance Corporation as a financial lender, making it a truly international endeavor with the participation of individuals from various countries. And this regional mega project is now officially generating 720 megawatts of green energy. Gerald, answering your question, as a graduate from a Chinese university called Hohai University, I'm not sure if you've heard about it. It's a relatively smaller university, but it actually specializes in hydropower and water resources. And I've always been very passionate about contributing to the development of my country. And in the year 2015, when President Xi Jinping introduced the Belt and Road Initiative, I was filled with a sense of hope and aspiration, and especially for my region, for my country. And I dreamt of being part of such a transformative project one day. Now being involved, at the Corrode project, which is an integral part of the Belt and Road Initiative, has been, almost like a dream come true. The project not only generates clean and sustainable energy, but also provides, enough power to meet the needs of approximately 5 million people. Just to tell you, in 2021, a remarkable milestone was achieved at the Corrode, project when the reservoir impounding took place, and witnessing the closure of the diversion tunnel gates and seeing the water level rise until all the familiar landscapes that we used to see before disappeared was an inspiring sight. The sense of accomplishment that accompanied this achievement was unparalleled, and it was a true testament to the progress we have made since the inception of the project. Just to give you a very personal touch, starting in 2008, when I was still in high school, I vividly remember the struggles of studying by the candlelight due to the frequent power outages and load shedding that plagued Pakistan. As a person coming from that generation, I personally experienced the hardships caused by the lack of consistent electricity supply. And fast forward to the present day, I find myself working in the power sector. You can see a fan behind me on this side, which is still working. So this is the benefits of consistent power supply. Yeah. So all of this makes me very, very proud.
Definitely, as you have a great story that I shared with us, that how energy is very important to modern life and how that it can make people's livelihood better. But again, hydropower is compared a more reliable new alternative, new energy source. And now let's turn to Mr. Herrero, an experienced executive in the energy sector, new energy sectors. But there are still challenges in the new energy sector, right? So what are some of the challenges to further apply new renewables and help the world to reach carbon neutral, Mr. Herrero?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. So I think that one thing that the Ukrainian crisis has very clearly put forward is the so-called, at least in Europe, the energy trilemma, which is basically how we can sort of ensure power and electricity for people, which is secure, which is affordable, and that helps to decarbonize the world. Yeah. So I think that it is very clear that renewables are in the sort of a core of the answer to this question, to this trilemma. And Europe has been a pioneer in the development of renewable energy sources from the very beginning of the century, even the back end of the last century, and with many lessons learned. There is still a sort of a big room for improvement. I think that in the different cycles of renewables investment, we are facing different challenges. But nowadays, I think the key challenges refers to the sort of removing the bottlenecks that we have in different sort of segments of the value chain. I think that permitting is clearly one of them. I think that we need efficient and coordinated administrations that allows sort of projects to move ahead swiftly. Grid connection continues being sort of an issue because of the lack of central planning. There are scattered projects developed in many areas where sort of we are seeing restrictions on a sort of a local or regional basis, which is not a problem on a national basis, but it starts being a significant problem on a let's say regional basis. Yeah. Then creating resilient supply chains. I think it's absolutely key to sort of continue securing the affordability of energy, because in the end, all these sort of issues, they sort of revert into a lack of visibility and sort of increased sort of cost for the system, which ultimately will clearly affect and revert into higher consumer prices. Yeah? So I think that, again, these three sort of bottlenecks together with regulatory uncertainty, as we've seen before, renewables being from the beginning sort of a highly subsidized technology until they achieve a level of maturity that sort of secure or ensure a levelized cost of electricity competitive with the more conventional renewable energies. I think that today we can ascertain that renewables are the most competitive, at least wind and solar PV, in many regions of the world. So I think that there's no doubt that this is the most sort of competitive use of resources, and more importantly, using endogenous resources of different regions that has been very critical in this sort of energy crisis. Yeah? So I think it's still a long way to go. There has been some improvements, but there's still a long way to go to try to soften and to resolve these sort of issues that represent clear bottlenecks in the deployment of capital and the development of renewables.
Absolutely. So definitely cutting some red tapes are very important to really apply renewable further. And again, as Mr. Herrero just mentioned about a supply chain, what I understood is China is now leading in solar panel productions as well as like windmills, wind turbines. So China has been leading its green energy technologies, and in addition to Asia, the world is going green with benefits from Chinese technologies. And now let's turn to Brazil, where Chinese technologies are modernized Brazilian hydro dam. Let's take a look.
Hello everyone, I'm Ana Borges from Brazil, and today I will introduce you to the Jupiás Modernization Project. This project is located in Três Lagoas, Mato Grosso do Sul. Come with me and let's learn more about it. Behind me you can see all the entire power plant. Our modernization project started in 2017, and until now 5 of 14 power units were refurbished. The scope of this project is huge. This kind of project is the largest and most complex in progress in Brazil. There are over 200 professionals directly and indirectly involved in the project to make it all possible. Carrying out this modernization project has been a challenge for all of us. Due to all the ongoing power plant operations which take place on the same site where the electricity is generated. It's necessary to manage all the activities, maintaining floor to make storage rooms and to enable enough free areas to move the pieces of the machinery and store them. The goals of the modernization is to reach a great technological update and also guarantee the better operational efficiency of the power units.
So in fact, hydropower technology in Brazil can be traced back many years, even before China started building its own dams. So China used to learn from Brazil to build dams and other hydropower technologies. And Mr. Yan, again, Mr. Yan is the Vice President of Operations for CTG Brazil. So have there been any challenges for Chinese company to come to Brazil and to help the Brazilians? Mr. Yan.
Okay, Brazil and Chile are both countries with numerous hydropower projects. Brazil has a rich experience with the construction and operation of hydropower projects by building E-type and other hydropower plants. During the construction of Three Gorges hydropower station, CTG went to Brazil and learned from E-type HPP. In the past 20 years, CTG has built and managed several big hydropower plants, such as Three Gorges, Xiluodu, Wudongde, and Baotan HPPs, accumulating a rich experience with construction and operation, making great progress in technology. In particular, CTG successfully implemented the modernization in Gordoba hydropower plant in China. Therefore, CTG has the ability and the confidence to manage the big hydropower plants in Brazil. After the acquisition of the concession right of Jupiá and Ilha Sotela HPPs in Brazil, the biggest challenge of CTG is not in the technology area. For the technology in the world is interconnected. Our biggest challenge is the issue of cultural integration. So firstly, we adopt the localized operation in Brazil, keeps the original local team, maintain the operation stability. In addition, China pays much attention to the reliability of the power station operation. So some Chinese engineers went to Brazil to work together with the local team, sharing the experience, taking with them the requirement and the management experience from headquarters. This has integrated the Chinese standard and the Brazilian standard. For example, China's standard of 3-level acceptance for quality control has been adopted in the modernization site in Brazil. In this way, the owner could be deeply involved in the quality control. Both teams have learned from each other, which improved the management and ensured the quality of operation and modernization. Now, CDG is the benchmark in the Brazilian sector with this excellent operation performance in HPPs.
So definitely we can see the local market is accepting technologies from CDG, China Three Gorges cooperation. But again, renewable energy is intermittent. That means there are still problems with better store it, and of course to transmit the electricity generated from hydropower. So what's the future plan for China Three Gorges operation in Brazil and to better help the world to really make the green drive possible, Mr. Yan?
Yeah, CDG is now the third largest generation company in Brazil, but our assets are many hydropower stations. The power generation of a hydropower station is largely dependent on the basin inflow situation. Over the past few years, Brazil has suffered from a drought not seen in many years. This has impacted a lot the hydropower generation. In order to balance this situation of single energy source and taken more contribution to Brazilian market, CDG is committed to the renewable energy development in the past few years. Now, 1 gigawatt of wind and solar farms have started construction. In the future, we may have more renewable projects in Brazil. We are also working with the local R&D institutions to research on the energy storage. I think in the future we will have the energy storage business in Brazil. Besides that, we built some electric vehicle charging station on the way from Chimbolo to our HPPs, which brings the local residents with easy access to clean energy.
So definitely we can see there are great progress and great projects on the ground. But again, let's turn back to Mr. Herrero. Compare with traditional fossil fuels, definitely there are huge potential for renewables, but still, as we have been discussing, a lot of challenges, policies, administrations, or just technological hurdles like how to distribute green energy as well as how to better store it. So any reasons for new energy firms to stay focused other than just making more money, Mr. Herrero?
Yeah, I think as we said before, yeah, so renewables for a company like CDG, that we are sort of a long-term investor, and I think that this is a key feature, that we are seeing the market becoming more and more sort of financial and losing a bit of the industrial element that companies used to have in the past. They had a great deal of entrepreneurship that is sort of being lost now with a very strong influence of sort of financial markets. Yeah? So I think that there has been a phase in which renewables were associated to sort of big returns being made primarily by developers. That we have to realize that we are investing in longer life assets with 30 to 40 years sort of operational useful life. So I think that if you intend to sort of operate efficiently those assets, you need to stay very focused on the sort of maintenance of those assets. The construction quality, so the build quality of those assets is critical in order to ensure sort of a smooth operation of the assets and sort of efficient investment or reinvestment in those assets. I think that, again, after the end of the useful life, these assets will have sort of a second life, whether they are transformed or repowered or transformed into other sort of sources of energy. But I think that despite all these challenges, as you said, the renewables, they don't have the complexity of nuclear or hydropower plants, but they have their own sort of specificities and complexities. in terms of the technology and in terms of the management of those assets. Yeah? And if you want to operate them profitably, you need to stay, as you said, very focused. You need to ensure that they have a sort of a best-in-class construction quality, and that you invest efficiently through the sort of the life cycle of the asset. Yeah.
So definitely that we can see the improvement of construction quality and as well as the facilities to make sure that green energy can be better applied. And for my understanding is that actually Chinese green technologies can also be found in Europe, where green energy has been adopted pretty widely. And now let's take a case study. Let's take a look.
Welcome to Perogordo PV plant. Right now, as you can see, this is Perogordo PV plant in Segovia, Spain. Is it impressive? Let me show you more details about this project. Perogordo PV plant started generating energy in 2020, and it has 45 megawatts peak of installed capacity. The main purpose of the project is contributing to produce green energy as well as reduce the carbon footprint. Now let me introduce you to the main components which form part of this PV plant. In Perogordo PV plant, we have more than 170,000 photovoltaic panels controlled by a tracker system which allows us to get the best performance of the photovoltaic panels. There is an inverter. It's transformed DC to AC current, and here we have more than 400 of them, and each one has 100 kilovolts amperes of capacity. Right now, we are near to a transformer plant. The main function of this equipment is to transform from low voltage to medium voltage. The main benefits of the project is create new opportunities to the local people to work here, to reduce the carbon footprint of the Spanish energy mix, and avoid 20,000 tons of CO2 per year.
So, Mr. Herrero, Europe has a very strong new energy sector. So now, how important it is for Chinese firms to explore possibilities over there in Europe, or in other words, how competitive are Chinese firms in a market that is already pretty crowded and pretty new energy savvy, Mr. Herrero?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, so I think that the European market has a long history. There has been a lot of sophistication in the market. Historically, European market has been dominated by the incumbent utilities in the different countries, but they are very large-scale utilities today. But we've seen that with renewables, we've seen what I call the sort of democratization of the energy sources. Renewables is more affordable for other type of investors with a sort of a smaller scale. And at the same time, it has bring sort of professionalization of the and specialization in the sector. Yeah? So nowadays you have sort of renewables segmented in a way that you have smaller players focus on the development side, especially on the early stages of development. You have sort of bigger companies taking over the more intensive sort of capital-intensive segment of the value chain, and then the utilities taking over the last stages of development together with the sort of operational phase. Yeah? I think that the challenges that creates as well is that obviously without having an integrated cycle of the life of the development of the asset, and sometimes the asset changing hands many times, that affects sort of the what I referred before, the building quality of the assets, and assets that, once again, I mean, we need to operate for at least 25, 30, 35 years. Yeah? So I think that what Chinese companies brings is not capital, which, yes, renewables is capital intensive, not to the level of other technologies, more conventional technologies, but it's still a capital intensive sort of activity. The issue is more on the expertise and the long-term approach to the investment. Yeah, as I said before, the sort of European companies which are still dominating the sector, they are very much pressed by sort of investors which they focus on short-term returns. They are measuring the market on a quarterly basis when they release their sort of earnings announcements. And I think that Chinese companies will still have the benefit of having this longer-term approach, keeping this industrial sort of angle in our DNA. That sometimes it's a disadvantage when you are just looking at sort of returns. And again, the sector has become very short-time focused. But over the long run, and I think that that's where sort of governments that we are working on, they realize that having this long-term approach is beneficial not only for CTG, not only for the government, but ultimately it will sort of revert into benefits for consumers in the long term.
So absolutely, well, a lot of Chinese firms, including, of course, new energy firms, as well as other firms from China that are moving abroad or reaching overseas, have a longer goal in plan or longer term plan in mind. But let's turn to Mr. Awan for a little bit more. For Chinese overseas projects, including new energy constructions, some would say they bring imbalance to nature. For example, the Kurot hydro dam is large, it's gigantic, but just from your on-the-ground experience, what's the real situation like over there? Has the environment changed because of the construction of that dam in a good way or in a bad way? Dr. Awan.
So, Gerald, we actually find ourselves in a challenging situation, or rather a catch-22 situation. We're deliberating between two options, both of which have their own drawbacks. When we compare hydropower to fossil fuel-based power plants, the former emerges as definitely the lesser evil, undoubtedly a better choice. While it's true that major hydropower projects often have significant environmental impacts, the Kurot project, where I'm based at right now, stands out with its minimal environmental footprint. This can be attributed to the unique characteristics of the project. Notably, there is limited, reliance on the river Jhelum downstream. So not a lot of people are actually relying on the Jhelum River. By examining the project closely, we did observe that there is no significant, diversion of the river. Instead, it operates as a run-of-the-river project, requiring minimal resettlement efforts. So the list of positive aspects for Kurot goes on. However, we must acknowledge that even with the minimized environmental impacts, creating a water body will inevitably affect the local flora and fauna. And to address this concern, the Kurot project has developed a comprehensive biodiversity management plan. We call it the BMP, which is aligned with the IFC's Performance Standard 6. The primary objective of this plan, of the BMP, is to ensure that we achieve no net loss of local flora and fauna during both the construction and operation stages of the project. So now this BMP has, received approval from local environmental protection agencies and the IFC. So it's just not us that we are approving it. It's the local agencies. And to emphasize our commitment to the environmental protection, we have enlisted the renowned International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN. You must have heard about it. To implement our BMP. So this kind of demonstrates the level of seriousness we attribute to safeguarding the environment. And allow me to illustrate the extent of our dedication with just an example. So during the project's construction phase, we got evidence which indicated that a stream of the river Jhelum had been affected. In response, the Kurot team proactively devised a restoration plan for the stream, and I'm delighted to inform you that the fish population has actually increased compared to the pre-construction period, indicating our positive impact.
Absolutely. So definitely, as Dr. Allen has mentioned, the Kuril hydropower dam not only kind of considers how much energy it can generate, but also have a minimal impact to the environment, or even improve the surrounding environment. And let's also go back to Mr. Yan. So what I've heard is like your firm in Brazil have also been helping like preserving fish and even opened a zoo for wild animals. Would you mind to share a little bit more on this, Mr. Yan?
Sure. Firstly, artificial breeding and the release of local fish is one of the important methods to ensure the stability of fish population in the reservoir area of our power station. CDG maintains a fish farming station with 54 tanks occupying 20,000 square meters. In each, we produce baby fish. Based on that, we release fish in the reservoir area along all our plants. Every year, we release around 3.6 million fries. Secondly, CDG is responsible for the Inia City Zoo. Now we are carrying around 410 animals with 55 different species. In this way, we can protect ecological environment with local animals. Besides that, in order to protect the vegetation around the reservoir, every year we make a plan of vegetation restoration. Last year, we finished around 150 hectares vegetation restoration.
Absolutely. So time flies by. We have a great conversation today, and thank you so much, gentlemen. Mr. Yang Yan, Vice President of Operations for CDG Brazil, Dr. Moaz Alwan, a hydropower engineer, live with us in Pakistan, as well as Ignacio Herrero, experienced executive in the energy sector, live with us in Europe. Thank you so much, gentlemen. But before we go, I have something more to say. Through environmentally friendly construction and engineering technology, the Belt and Road Initiative can help the world to create balance between man and nature. From renewable energy to saving wild animals, we human beings have to work together to bring about a better and greener future. This is Mega Reality. We will be back.